Well, I'm super excited to be kicking off this series, Collide. And if you stepped into one of our physical campuses, you received one of these cards with a thumbs up and a thumbs down on it. And if you're connecting online or watching this on demand, you don't have one of these cards. So I want to just share with you one of two options. One is you could make your own. Grab a sheet of paper, a Post-it note, a Sharpie, a pen, and draw a thumbs up and a thumbs down. Or, and this might be pushing you out of your comfort zone, you could use your own thumbs if you want to. Either way works. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some statements, and then I'm just going to ask you to, give a thumbs up, or I'm going to ask you to give a thumbs down. It's up to you. You can choose if it's a thumbs up or thumbs down for you. It's totally up to your opinion. The first couple statements are going to be pretty easy, and then we're going to have a couple that will be a little bit more introspective. You ready? Okay, here we go. Super Bowl's coming up, and this isn't a who you think will win question or statement. This is a who you want to win. Do you want the Kansas City Chiefs to win? How many of you thumbs up people or thumbs down? And do you want the Philadelphia Eagles to win? Thumbs up, anyone? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Or you like me, you don't care. I mean, that's me. You might be bitter because my Cowboys aren't in the Super Bowl, and maybe I am a little bit bitter, but this year I just really don't care who wins, which is great to watch the game because, emotionally, I just want it to be a great game. Well, speaking of my Cowboys and whoever you're rooting for, do you think your team, whoever that might be, will not just make it to the Super Bowl next year, but will win the Super Bowl next year? Come on, give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if you think your team will actually win the Super Bowl next year. Now, I stated I'm a Cowboys fan, and this is not pessimistic of my thinking. I'm a realist. There's zero chance that the Cowboys are going to make it to the Super Bowl, let alone win the Super Bowl. In fact, I don't even think the Cowboys will make it out of the first round of the playoffs next year. It's a brutal, brutal reality being a Cowboys fan. Well, one more Super Bowl statement. Out of all the Super Bowl party foods, here's the statement. You ready? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Buffalo chicken dip is the best Super Bowl party food. Thumbs up, people. Thumbs down, people. I give it a big old thumbs up. In fact, 6 years ago when we moved to central Pennsylvania, I had never heard about buffalo chicken dip. I know that might shock you, surprise you. I'm just telling you, let alone eat it. I just have never heard of it. We got invited to a gathering, showed up, and they had this goop stuff in a crock pot. I'm like, what's this? And they're like, it's buffalo chicken dip. They looked at me like I was odd. I'm like, I've never heard of it. I took one bite, and it was like, this is the best stuff ever. Well, Groundhog's Day was Thursday, and the groundhog saw its shadow, which means 6 more weeks of winter. And so here's a statement, and just give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. All right, this is your opinion. So here's a statement. The groundhog is a liar. Thumbs up, thumbs down. I give it a big thumbs up. The groundhog is a liar. In fact, I did a quick Google search and I discovered that the groundhog is wrong 39% of the time. I mean, 39, you would think that it would at least be at 50%, right? You have a 50-50 chance of getting the answer right. No, it's 39%. Well, let me ask you another series of questions, maybe a little bit more, introspective. And now you can hold your card up, or maybe you just want to hold it in front of you and flip it to a thumbs up or thumbs down, whatever you feel comfortable with. When it comes to your faith journey, okay, let's just circle around this. You feel like there's a space for you to grow in your faith journey. Thumbs up, thumbs down. When it comes to your faith journey, you just feel conflicted. And you can attach whatever you want to conflicted. I mean, I want to create kind of a broad kind of spectrum here, but do you just feel conflicted inside? Maybe you're feeling challenged. Maybe you have some questions that you seem like you can't get answered. Maybe you're just wrestling with God right now. And it all gets tethered into, well, your faith journey. Thumbs up, thumbs down. When it comes to faith, you just want, well, more faith. Like, that's what you kind of long for. You're like, I just feel like I don't have enough faith. Thumbs up, thumbs down. You see, faith is such an interesting word. It's such an important word. You see it throughout the storylines of the Bible. But so many times when we talk about faith, it becomes kind of nebulous. It becomes kind of ethereal. It kind of becomes one of these ideas that, like, we try to put our arms around, we try to hold on to, we try to get a concrete, clear picture of what faith is. And so many times, I know for me, across my faith journey, sometimes I just feel like, yeah, but what is it really? And maybe you feel like that as well. So in this series, we're just going to try to, help create a really clear picture of what faith is and what it isn't, and the importance of faith. You see that word faith, the Greek word that was given for faith can also, that Greek word can also be translated as belief or trust. That's why so many times our communicators are actually say the word faith, and then they'll include belief and trust in kind of that definition, because it starts to help really shape what faith is. Faith is belief, and faith is trust. A working definition that we're going to be using in this series is that it's complete trust or confidence in someone or something. I mean, the key word that you can't miss is complete. That's 100%, right? 100%, all in. Confidence, trust in someone or something. A phrase that I've said so many times before is that God is who he says he is, and he will do everything that he says he will do. It's a picture of faith, that God is who he says he is. That's belief that God is. It's belief that God is who he says he is. And the trust component is that he'll do everything that he says he's going to do, that you can trust that God will deliver on, his promises, what he has said that he will do and he's going to do. The Hebrew author writes this kind of definition of faith, that now faith is confidence. Here's that confidence word, is right, 100%, like you can count on, and what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see. And this is the do not see part, is what gets really difficult when it comes to the faith journey, that God is working in ways in front of us that maybe we don't understand, we can't see, we don't comprehend. Maybe he's not ready for us to see yet. And that's where faith can get challenging, especially when, life gets difficult. And the Hebrew writer kind of leaps off of this kind of definition, this framework around faith. In Hebrews 11 gives us this entire list of, people in the Bible that lived a life of faith. Now, when you really get into the stories of all these people that the Hebrew author shares about who were giants of faith, I'm just telling you, it's stories of broken people. It's stories that reflected very imperfect people. These stories were filled with scandal. These stories, some of them, would just be, if they were ever really, really made into a movie, would be rated R. In fact, some of these stories, parents, if you have younger kids, you don't want to read them those stories yet. But yet the Hebrew author ends by saying they were all commended for their faith. Even in their imperfect stories and their scandalous stories and their rated R stories, they were still commended for their faith. And that's important because it starts to help us understand what faith is and what faith isn't. But then the Hebrew author goes on and says, yet none of them received what had been promised. And you might be scratching your head going, whoa, I thought faith was confidence, that you could trust God, that God is who he says he is and will do everything that he says he was going to do. But yes, yet none of them received what was promised. Well, what does that mean? So God isn't going to do what he promises to do? Well, if you just go back a few verses before, the author makes this statement in verse 33, and gained what was promised. So you might be confused a little bit more. Wait a minute. So they did get what God promised or they didn't? Which one is it? Well, it's to understand what the author is doing with this word promise. On one level, God did everything that he said he's going to do for them, what he promised to do. But there's an ultimate promise that God hadn't revealed to them yet. What was that promise? It was all about Jesus. You see, the Hebrew author goes on and goes, since God had planned something better, it's Jesus, for us, that only together with us would they be made perfect. See, yeah, God delivered his promises, but there's the ultimate promise delivered through Jesus to walk on this earth, to die on the cross. God raised him from the grave, and Jesus said, now come be missional with me. Faith. We're going to be looking at a story today that will start to help, will build a really clear framework around what faith looks like. But before we jump into that story, let me ask you this question. If you had 1 week, what would you do? Like if I walked up to you and said, you get 1 free week, your boss is fine, your spouse is fine, you get 1 week, money's not an option, there's no obstacles, there's no limitations. Whatever you want to do for that 1 week, what would that week look like for you? Right? If you're like me, your brain is in fast motion thinking about all those things. If money was an obstacle, there's no limitations. Your boss gave it off. Your spouse gave it off. Right? Like you could go do anything. What would it look like? The list of fun, the list of adventure, or maybe for you, you're like, I just sleep all week. Now, what if I added just 2 words to this question? How would it shift? If you had 1 week to live, what would it look like? As I thought about that question, there's 3 things that came to my mind. It's not in this priority order, it's just all 3. If I had 1 week, I would eat the best Mexican food. I'm talking every day, for breakfast, for snack, for dinner. I mean, I would just eat the best. I love Mexican food, but I want the best Mexican food. The second thing I would do if I had 1 week to live, I'd travel out to the West Coast. I'd sit on the beach and every night watch the sun set over the ocean. If you've never seen the sunset over the ocean, I'm just telling you, there's nothing like it. God's beauty and majesty. And I spend every moment hugging and looking at my family. That's what I would do. It's amazing how those 2 words shift what we think about. For Jesus, he was entering his last week. He knew it was going to be his last week of his life, but people had no idea what was really coming his way. And he was just entering into that last week, and what we're told is, well, Jesus was approaching the ancient city of Jericho. Now, to understand what this journey looks like, I mean, Jesus was headed to Jerusalem, but this wasn't some simple, easy walk. In fact, what we know, it was somewhere around a 17-mile journey from Jericho to Jerusalem. And just to bring it into our context, it'd be like you walking from Du Bois to Weedville, or if you live in Punxsutawney, from Punxsy to Brookville, or from Mill Hall to Jersey Shore, or from Clearfield to Phillipsburg, or from Grampian to Glen Campbell. I mean, that's just the framework, a 17-mile walk. I mean, this isn't some easy walk, 17 miles. But what made this walk insanely difficult wasn't just the distance. It was the fact that Jerusalem sits some 2,500 feet above sea level, and Jericho sits some 800 feet below sea level. And all of you are quick on math. That's some 3,300 feet of elevation gain. The tallest building in the United States is the One World Tower. It sits at 1,776 feet. I mean, that's tall. The tallest building in the world is in Dubai. It's right over 2,700 feet tall. I mean, we're talking 3,300 feet of elevation gain. This was a grueling, difficult walk from Jericho up to Jerusalem. And what Jesus knew is he's entering in, about ready to begin his last week of life. And he knew the journey ahead of him. And so he enters into Jericho. And Luke tells us that a blind man was sitting by the roadside begging. And why was a blind man sitting by the road begging? Well, the blind man, the only way he could survive, the only way he could live was by the pity, the generosity of people passing by. And there was a whole lot of people coming through Jericho up to Jerusalem, and from Jerusalem through Jericho. I mean, this was a really important kind of crossroads kind of town. And this man was just, his entire existence was just hoping that people would give him something so he could live. Now, Luke doesn't tell us his name, but the gospel writer, Gospel of Mark, in Mark chapter 10, actually tells us his name. His name is Bartimaeus. That's a really long name and not a real familiar name to you and me to this day, but this name Bartimaeus is actually two words that got shoved together. That first three-letter word is the word bar, which means son of, and then the last part is Timaeus. So literally his name was, son of Timaeus, and we just call him, Bartimaeus. And Bartimaeus was sitting there and he was begging. And we're told that when he heard the crowd going by, why? Because he couldn't see, right? So he hears the commotion, he hears the footsteps. I can imagine him tasting all the dust from the road that's getting kicked up his way, and he just hears it, and it's vastly different than just people passing through, because when Jesus walked through, people were with him and following him. The numbers continued to grow and continue to grow. And when he heard the crowd going by, he asked, hey, what's happening? What's going on? Why the commotion? Why the crowds? Why the excitement? Like he could just feel and sense the energy. And the crowd told him, Jesus of Nazareth is passing by. The name they gave is really important. Jesus was a very common name back then. It was just a lot of guys had the name Jesus, right? It was just one of those common names. But they narrowed it down to his hometown. It's like, no, this is Jesus of Nazareth, which would have really drawn the circle in, because people knew about the story of this guy named Jesus from Nazareth. He's a great teacher, and he was healing people, and man, a lot of rumors were spread around about him, and people were trying to figure out who he really was. But in that exact moment, Bartimaeus called out, Jesus, Son of David. Now, this title, vastly different than Jesus of Nazareth. Bartimaeus was making an emphatic claim that this is Jesus, the promised Messiah, the one that all the Old Testament, the ancient Jewish prophets talked about, that was going to come one day. This was the title, the Son of David. Bartimaeus was like, okay, yeah, he's from Nazareth, great, but this is a promised Messiah. And he cries out to the Messiah, Jesus, Son of David. And he goes, have mercy on me. Now that word mercy means compassion, but it was also a scream, a call to heal me. This was a phrase they would use. It's like, have compassion. I want to be healed. Now, yes, he wanted to be healed physically. He couldn't see. But religiously and culturally during this period of time, blindness was also connected to spiritual blindness. If you're physically blind, they equated it also to spiritual blindness. It's like, have mercy on me. Have mercy on me. Heal my blindness. And Luke tells us that those who led the way, those who were out in front of Jesus, leading the way, spiritual leaders leading the way, what did they do? They rebuked him. They talked down at him. They scorned him. They shoved him into his place and told him, be quiet, shut up, don't talk, We don't want to hear your voice. I mean, just think about the tension in this moment. The religious spiritual leaders who were leading the way were the first to try to shove Bartimaeus and keep him silent. But what did he do? We're told that he shouted all the more. He shouted all the more. Just because the crowds were trying to keep him silent, just because the crowds were trying to marginalize him, he's like, no, I'm not going to stop. Now, what's interesting about this word shouted, this Greek word that they use to describe what he was doing, it's used throughout the Bible. In the book of Job, the same word was used to describe a donkey bray. I mean, think about that sound. Like, if you've ever heard a donkey bray, right? Like, it's the most obnoxious and loud, and it cuts through any crowd sound. This ancient word was also used to describe a woman screaming while giving birth. If you've ever been around a woman giving birth, right? That scream is a very unique scream. And it's the same word that's used when Joshua was marching around Jericho, the very city that this blind man was sitting at, the very city that Jesus was traveling through. Where Joshua, the trumpets blared. And the text tells us that they shouted, or it was a war cry. I mean, I just want you to feel the emotion. It wasn't just like he raised his voice a little bit. It wasn't like he was just trying to talk over the crowds. I mean, just think about all the emotion tied up into this word. I mean, this guy, this Bartimaeus, he realized that the Messiah was passing by him and that he was a source of healing. He shouts out to him, Son of David, my Messiah, have mercy on me. Have compassion on me. And Jesus stopped. Remember, Jesus was just about ready to start his last week of life. What was on his mind? What was important for him? Plus, Jesus understood that he had a 17-mile, 3,300-foot in elevation gain journey ahead of him. And what does he do? He stops. For the marginalized, he stops. For the vulnerable, he stops. For the ones where the religious crowd tried to shut up, he stops. And he orders the man, Bartimaeus, to be brought to him. Gospel of Mark tells us that when the crowd looked at Bartimaeus and said, well, Jesus wants you, that he threw off his cloak and he jumped to his feet. I mean, again, all of that emotion, years and years of him just sitting there, begging for his life, and then all of a sudden, Jesus says, come here. And he jumps to his feet. And Jesus asks him this question. He goes, what do you want? What do you want me to do for you? You see, I think that's the key word, you. Jesus is like, I see you. You're of value to me. I love you. Out of everything Jesus had on his important list that day, he looks at the one that the crowd tried to silence and said, no. No one's going to silence you because you're of value to me. What do you want me to do for you? And Bartimaeus goes, Lord, I want to see. I want to see. And Jesus said to him, receive your sight. What has healed you? Now, if you know the story, you know what goes in this line. If you've never heard this story, maybe you can take a good guess. But you see, I find that so many times we go to try to fill a line like this, and we have other words swirling around in our mind. I mean, your choices has healed you. Your knowledge has healed you. Your goodness, your attendance at church has healed you. Your kindness has healed you. Love's a good word. Can't go wrong with love. Your love has healed you. But what did Jesus say? Your faith has healed you. And you see, this word healed has a double meaning. This word healed in the ancient Greek can be translated one of two ways. It could be translated healed, a physical healing. Bartimaeus was physically blind, so that word fits that context. But it also can be translated as saved. Remember, in that culture, in that religious culture, blindness physically equated to spiritual blindness as well. And Jesus says, your faith not only has healed you physically, but your faith has saved you. You see, it's not about what you do. And this is so important. It's not about what you do. It's about who Jesus is and what he did. It's about who Jesus is. That's why Bartimaeus says, no, you're the son of David. You're the promised Messiah. And Jesus says, your faith has healed you. Your faith has healed you. Your faith has saved you. And immediately, he received his sight. And he followed Jesus, praising God. And when all the people saw it, they also praised God. Now, what does faith look like? What does faith look like? You see, I love the story of Bartimaeus because it starts to really paint a clear picture of what faith looks like by his story, but his interaction with Jesus. You see, I think faith looks audacious. No matter the people surrounding you. I mean, it was religious people leading the way who tried to marginalize, who tried to shut up Bartimaeus. And he was like, it doesn't matter that you're out in front leading Jesus. My faith isn't connected to you, it's connected to Jesus. And maybe that's what you need to hear. I get that church people, Christian people, religious people, this might be part of your story, have hurt you. And so many people then walk away from God. And God's like, whoa, time out. Your faith isn't in religious or Christian type of people. Your faith should be connected to me. And for Bartimaeus, his audacious faith says it doesn't matter what the crowds say to me. It doesn't matter what the crowds are doing to me. Because my faith, Bartimaeus is like, my faith is in the Messiah, the promised one, the Jesus, my King. Do you have audacious faith? No matter what other people say. Because you realize your faith is connected to Jesus. What does faith look like? It propels you. It propels you. No matter the obstacles around you. No matter what's in your way. When the crowd was in his way, his blindness was in his way. That's why I love Mark tells us he just jumped up on his feet. He didn't know which direction to go, but he was ready to go. No matter what the obstacle was in his way, he was like, I'm going. People didn't want him to see Jesus. He's going. His blindness kept him from physically trying to find Jesus. He was going to find him. Like, no matter what happened, he was like, I'm up, I'm ready, all that emotion. He's like, I'm ready to go. Does your faith look like that? It's so easy to connect so many obstacles to our faith and say, well, I was going to, but faith propels you. Why? Because it's who you've placed your faith in. Which connects to this next one. What does faith look like? It reveals. Who is Jesus really in your life? This is what propelled him. This is what created audacious faith within Bartimaeus. It wasn't just Jesus of Nazareth. No, for Bartimaeus, it was Jesus, my Messiah. Who is Jesus really for you? Is he the risen King? Is he the Lord of your life? Is he the source of all your strength? If he is, it doesn't matter what other people say, and it doesn't matter the obstacles in your life, because he's leading you. You see, faith really reveals of who you say Jesus is. So who is Jesus to you? Is he a soft, cuddly little bear that you place on your bed and you take off your bed and you hug and you put him back? Or is he the risen king? And what does faith look like? It shapes you. It shapes you. Are you living your life in reflection of Jesus? Is your time shaped by your faith in Jesus? Is your money shaped by your faith in Jesus? Is how you treat other people shaped by your faith in Jesus? Do you understand that whatever you do, it's missional for God? Does it shape? Because what does Bartimaeus do? He gets up, Jesus heals him, and he follows him. His entire life is shaped now because of Jesus. A few moments ago, I shared this thought with you. It's not about what you do, it's about who Jesus is and what he did. But this is not a complete thought. It's part A, but there's a part B that's essential. You see, when you grasp what Jesus did for you, it will shape what you do. See, faith isn't some ethereal feeling emotion. Faith is audacious, and faith propels, and faith reveals, and faith in the risen King Jesus will shape everything you do in every moment of your day. Let's pray. Lord, I pray that we have faith like Bartimaeus. No matter what people say around us, no matter the obstacles in our life, that we'll have faith like Bartimaeus. That you are our risen King. And Lord, I pray that us following you will shape every moment of every day of our life. In your name I pray.